Have you noticed that there's been a shift in how stories are being told today? There was a time when stories were carved into stone and whispered around fires. A time when heroes stood taller than life. Figures who crossed impossible worlds, challenged fate itself, and returned home transformed. In those ancient stories, the hero's journey was sacred.
Make it England!
A path of trials, revelations, sacrifice, and triumph. A reminder that humanity could rise above fear if someone was so brave enough to walk the road. In today's stories, the monsters aren't giants or gods. They're the quiet wounds inside us, broken systems and burdens that landed on us by chance. Modern protagonists of today's era don't set out to save the world. They're just trying to survive it. There's no such thing as perfect heroes. Instead, there are people doing their very best to get through impossible situations. The old hero's path has fallen apart, and in it, what's left behind is a different kind of story. A story that brought the death of the hero's journey. I guess we should first start off with what exactly is the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell was an American mythologist and writer. He spent decades studying myths from cultures all over the world, looking for universal patterns in storytelling and human experience. He saw myths not as just old stories, but as mirrors showing the core truths of human life. He's most famous for his concept of the hero's journey, also known as the monomyth, which he described in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. In this book, 17 narrative structures are laid out that describes the cycle of a hero's journey. In this most basic form, it's where a hero leaves their ordinary life, faces trials, achieves some form of revelation or victory, and returns home transformed.
Why the hero with 1,000 faces?
Well, because that's what's worth writing about. I mean, even in popular novel writing, you see, the main character is a hero or a heroine. That is to say, someone who has found or achieved or done something beyond the normal range of achievement and experience. A hero properly is someone who has given his life to something bigger than himself or other than himself.
Pretty interesting, right? Because of these 17 concepts, it ended up influencing a wide genre of shows and movies. The Matrix, Lion King, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Lord of the Rings, you name it. Even going as far as helping shape one of the biggest movie franchises in the world, Star Wars. George Lucas, the director of Star Wars, once credited Campbell's book, saying, quote, "I wrote many drafts of this work and then I stumbled across the hero with 1,000 faces. It was the first time that I really began to focus. I went around in circles for a long time, trying to come up with stories, and the script rambled all over, and I ended up with hundreds of pages. It was the hero with 1,000 faces that just took what was about 500 pages and said, here it is. Here's the end, here's the focus, here's the way it's all laid out. After reading more of Joe's books, I began to understand how I could do this." And as you know it, the rest would be history. So, what is it about this concept?
It's a cycle. It's a going and a return that the hero cycle represents. But then this can be seen also in the simple initiation ritual, where a child has to give up his childhood and become an adult, has to die, you might say, to its infantile personality and psyche, and can come back as a self-responsible adult. It's a fundamental experience that everyone has to undergo. We're in our childhood for at least 14 years, and then to get out of that posture of dependency, psychological dependency, into one of psychological self-responsibility requires a death and resurrection. And that is the basic motif of the hero journey. Leaving one condition, finding the source of life to bring you forth in a richer or more mature or other condition.
Wait, a lot of these ideas aren't really used anymore, or at least they're nowhere near as popular in modern shows. But if we go back just a few years, you can see where everything started to shift. Older anime from the 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s used the hero's journey as more than just a storytelling tool, but as a way to help format and structure the story that was being told. It gave writers a clear structure to follow. Protagonists, leaving their ordinary world due to a call to adventure, faces challenges indicating the trial stage, reach their lowest point, overcome it and become stronger, and finally return home transformed. This structure helped keep the story focused and organized. It gave each episode or arc a purpose. Battles, training arcs, and conflicts weren't random. There were stages in the hero's growth. Even side characters, mentors, and villains were used to support the progression, making the story feel complete. By following this pattern, older anime could balance action, character growth, and the themes in a way that felt natural. Characters like Simon, Yusuke, or Naruto weren't perfect. They made mistakes and faced setbacks, but every challenge helped them grow. Heroes of this era stood for friendship and courage, and their actions reflected these values. Even when the villains were powerful or cruel, the protagonists of the story's conviction and commitment to what was right made each win feel deserved. Unlike modern protagonists, heroes of this era usually embraced the call to adventure. They confronted their trials directly, even when the path was painful or dangerous. Each stage of the journey molded them into someone stronger. That growth was inspiring. And it's a big part of why these shows reflected the spirit of the world at the time. In Japan, the post-war economic boom created the idea that hard work could lead to a secure life. While in the US, the American dream promised the idea that anyone, regardless of where you were born or what social class you were in, can achieve success through hard work and determination. Shows from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s reflected these ideals. Characters like Spike, Kenshin, and the Elrich brothers faced challenges, learned and grew from them, and ultimately achieved clear victories. Their journeys show that effort and perseverance led somewhere tangible. In a sense, I guess you could say that these shows show the quote-unquote dream. I guess you could say that these shows and stay true to your values, success was possible. But today, that kind of clarity has largely disappeared. Success is no longer guaranteed, and life feels chaotic and unpredictable. Modern anime of today are a lot similar to this ideology. Protagonists face internal or unresolved struggles. Their paths are non-linear, and victories are often ambiguous or absent. The straightforward hero who climbs step by step towards a clear goal no longer exists in the same way. The transition towards modern psychologically driven anime began in the mid-2000s and continued into the early 2010s. There were shows like Death Note and Code Geass that started exploring morally gray protagonists whose choices weren't straightforward. The stakes shifted from purely physical or skill-based challenges to ethical dilemmas. This period also saw the industry expanding globally, experimenting with darker themes and catering to audiences more interested in complex characters. By the 2010s to today, the shift had basically completed. The classic structure of trials leading to clear transformation has been replaced by a journey of uncertainty. Today's heroes often face unexpected challenges, make mistakes, and don't always end up stronger in the way older shows promised. So that brings up the question, how is modern shows different than before? The move away from the hero's journey wasn't sudden. It was a gradual shift, a change in creative priorities, audiences, and an industry simply moving forward. For years, Campbell's concept provided older shows a roadmap that defined story beats and gave a sense of purpose. But over time, as the genre grew and more shows were produced, studios and creators began to question whether this format was still as timeless as it once seemed. Nowadays, stories love characters who aren't sure who they are, people who fight against what's expected of them, or crack under pressure. Even the overall vibe and the way characters handle themselves today is entirely different. Modern anime approaches the 17 stages differently, or sometimes even bypasses some steps. If you look at Chainsaw Man, Denji's call is survival rather than destiny. Mentors are inconsistent, and trials often harm rather than clearly transform him. His wins are often messy, yet somehow leaves us satisfied no matter the circumstance. Freeran subverts the journey entirely, exploring stages like reflection and reckoning long after the adventure is over, emphasizing emotional and existential growth instead of epic battles, yet manages to tell a tale that follows his philosophical heart, the search for meaning, identity, and transformation. Blue Lock reinterprets the journey into a competitive, psychological context. The ordeals are relentless soccer challenges, the rewards is ego-driven success, and moral stakes are minimal, reflecting personal ambition over societal ideals. Even something as simple as the colors used in both eras tell a story of its own. Older anime color palettes were bright, bold, and easy to read. Primary colors like red, blue, and yellow dominated, and lighting stayed mostly consistent. Shadows were used, but very sparingly, mainly to accentuate dramatic moments. These visual choices reinforced the structure of the hero's journey. Heroes stood out clearly from villains, trials were easy to follow, and the vibrant setting supported a tone of optimism and aspiration, making each step of the hero's growth visually impactful. Modern anime, by contrast, often used darker or desaturated color palettes. Lighting was used to help convey mood and emotion. Grimy lighting paired with bursts of colors mirrors the complexity of its characters and subverts the traditional hero's journey. You want a story about being the best and going on grand adventures? Then use bright yellows, blues, whites. But if you want a more down-to-earth, grimy, harsh story, use darker colors. The hero's journey has changed. Older anime gave us heroes climbing a clear path, while today's anime shows that heroism can look very different. Survival, emotional growth, and moral complexity replace clear-cut triumph. Modern anime doesn't abandon the idea of a hero, it redefines it, using a new tool to reflect the unpredictable, often messy nature of life itself. The journey itself may be harder to see, but the lessons and struggles remains just as powerful.